June 1943, Camp Crossville, Tennessee. Obergefreiter Klaus Hartmann stood in the mess hall line examining the metal tray he had been handed and trying to reconcile what he was seeing with everything he had been taught about American captivity. The tray contained portions that exceeded anything he had received during 2 years of military service in North Africa. White bread, not the dark bread that German soldiers ate. Meat that appeared to be actual beef, rather than the mystery substances that passed for meat in Wehrmacht rations, fresh vegetables, and something that made no sense at all, a small bowl containing what appeared to be frozen cream coloured white and yellow. The American cook gestured toward the frozen substance and said something in English that Hartmann didn't understand. Another prisoner who spoke some English translated, "Ice cream, dessert, standard meal component." Hartmann took his tray to a table and sat with other newly arrived prisoners who were experiencing similar confusion. They had been captured in Tunisia 3 weeks earlier, transported across the Atlantic, processed through facilities in Virginia, arrived at Camp Crossville yesterday, expecting conditions that German propaganda had prepared them for: minimal food, harsh treatment, forced labor under brutal conditions. Instead, they were eating meals that exceeded German military rations and being offered frozen dessert as routine part of every meal. Think about that. Enemy soldiers captured after fighting against American forces being served better food than they had eaten while fighting for Germany. Being given luxuries, ice cream, white bread, fresh meat, as standard rations rather than special treatment designed to impress Red Cross inspectors. What Hartmann didn't know, as he cautiously tasted the ice cream, was that this abundance was standard across all American POW camps, that over 370,000 German prisoners held in camps throughout United States were receiving identical treatment. That American military policy required feeding enemy prisoners according to Geneva Convention standards that happened to exceed German military ration quality by substantial margins. What Hartmann didn't know was that food he was eating would become primary vehicle for psychological transformation that American authorities hadn't planned but would prove more effective than any deliberate re-education program. That every meal demonstrating American abundance would erode German propaganda about American weakness and poverty. That ice cream would accomplish what lectures about democracy never could, proving through direct experience that American prosperity was real rather than propaganda fiction. What Hartmann didn't know was that he and thousands of other German prisoners would spend rest of their lives, decades after war ended, telling family and friends about ice cream they had eaten in American prison camps as way of explaining what America possessed that Germany lacked. That frozen dessert would become symbol of civilizational difference that couldn't be explained away by ideology or rationalized through propaganda. What Hartmann didn't know was that American military doctors would monitor prisoner health and discover German POWs were gaining average of 15-20 pounds during first 6 months of captivity. That medical officers would document improved health markers across prisoner population. That dental records would show improvement in oral health despite years of neglect during military service. That physical evidence of American abundance would be written in prisoner bodies as measurably as in their minds. What Hartmann didn't know was that photographs of well-fed, healthy prisoners would be intercepted by German intelligence and initially dismissed as propaganda fabrications because officials couldn't believe enemy prisoners looked healthier than German soldiers. That physical evidence would eventually force recognition that American abundance was real rather than Allied deception. That returning prisoners would carry proof in their bodies: weight gained, teeth fixed, health improved. That couldn't be explained away. What Hartmann didn't know was that he would return to Germany in 1946, weighing 28 pounds more than when captured, with perfect dental health, carrying savings exceeding 6 months' German wages, possessing knowledge about American prosperity that would make him advocate for American-style democracy during post-war Reconstruction. That his transformation from Wehrmacht soldier to democratic advocate would be replicated across hundreds of thousands of returned prisoners who would reshape German political culture for generations. The mathematics of abundance were being written in portions of ice cream served 3 times weekly across hundreds of camps, and those mathematics were proving something that German leadership denied was possible, that American industrial capacity extended even to feeding enemy prisoners better than Germany fed its own soldiers while simultaneously prosecuting global war. By the time Hartmann finished his ice cream, eating slowly to make experience last as long as possible, he understood something that would reshape his entire understanding of war he had fought. The side that could afford to give ice cream to enemy prisoners was side with resources so vast that victory was inevitable, regardless of tactical outcomes. His diary entry that evening, June 10th, 1943. The Americans are feeding us well. This is probably temporary, special treatment for new arrivals. I expect conditions will deteriorate to what we were told to expect, but for now, this meal exceeded anything I ate in 2 years fighting for Germany. He was wrong about the temporary part. May 1943. German soldiers captured in North Africa during final collapse of Axis forces in Tunisia had clear expectations about American captivity based on propaganda they had received throughout military service. The propaganda emphasized several themes consistently: Americans, weak and decadent, incapable of discipline and hardship that German soldiers endured routinely. American capitalism created poverty and exploitation. Only wealthy lived well while workers suffered deprivation. American military forces, poorly trained and poorly equipped, dependent on material superiority rather than soldier quality. American treatment of prisoners would reflect these characteristics: minimal food, inadequate shelter, forced labor under brutal conditions. The propaganda wasn't random, served strategic purposes. Soldiers who believed capture meant brutal treatment would fight longer before surrendering. Soldiers who believed Americans were weak would maintain confidence despite tactical setbacks. Soldiers who believed capitalism created poverty would view socialism as superior system despite its failures to provide adequate military supplies. Specific expectations about POW treatment shaped by several sources. Wehrmacht training materials included sections on conduct if captured, emphasized maintaining military bearing despite harsh treatment expected from enemies. Propaganda films showed Allied POW camps as brutal facilities where prisoners were starved and beaten. Returned prisoners from Eastern Front campaigns described Soviet camps where conditions were genuinely horrific. German propaganda suggested American camps would be similar, though perhaps slightly less brutal. The propaganda about American poverty was particularly pervasive. German soldiers shown photographs of American slums and breadlines from Great Depression, told that American workers lived in conditions worse than German workers, informed that American military strength came from exploiting resources stolen from other nations rather than from domestic productivity. The cumulative message: America lacked industrial and agricultural capacity to provide adequate supplies even for its own population, much less for enemy prisoners. Obergefreiter Klaus Hartmann had absorbed this propaganda during 2 years of military service. He believed Americans were militarily inferior, successful only because of material advantages. He believed American soldiers lacked German fighting spirit. He believed American society was characterized by inequality and exploitation. He expected captivity would involve harsh treatment, reflecting American brutality behind facade of democratic pretense. His expectations were shared by virtually all German prisoners arriving in American camps during 1943. They expected minimal food, perhaps bread and water with occasional thin soup. They expected forced labor, probably in dangerous conditions with inadequate safety measures and brutal overseers. They expected harsh treatment, beatings, humiliation, deliberate cruelty designed to break their spirit and extract labor without regard for health or dignity. They expected conditions that would test their endurance and prove that German soldiers were superior, even in defeat. What they encountered was so different from expectations that many initially believed it was temporary propaganda display designed to impress Red Cross inspectors before conditions would deteriorate to expected norms. The cognitive dissonance between propaganda-shaped expectations and observed reality created psychological crisis that would take weeks or months to resolve. The resolution would reshape their understanding not just of America, but of Germany and entire ideological framework they had been taught. June 1943. Processing of German POWs through American camps began with procedures designed to establish control while respecting Geneva Convention requirements. Prisoners, photographed and fingerprinted, medical examinations, conducted documenting health conditions, clothing, checked for contraband, personal information, recorded. The processing, systematic and efficient, reflected American organizational capacity that many prisoners found impressive despite themselves. Medical examinations revealed physical toll of German military service. Many prisoners, signs of malnutrition despite being combat soldiers, dental health, poor, untreated minor injuries, common, skin conditions from inadequate hygiene, widespread, medical documentation, provided baseline allowing later comparison. But psychological impact came from small details that contradicted propaganda. Guards, armed but not overtly threatening, maintained professional distance rather than displaying hostility prisoners expected. Medical examinations, thorough and professional. Doctors treated prisoners with same clinical detachment they would show American soldiers rather than with contempt or cruelty. Processing felt clinical rather than hostile, administrative procedure rather than deliberate humiliation. Facilities themselves contradicted expectations. Barracks, wooden structures with proper roofs, floors, walls. Not open-air pens or underground bunkers that propaganda suggested. Beds had mattresses, thin but adequate. Blankets provided. Heating systems existed. Lighting, electric, bathrooms, running water and flush toilets rather than primitive latrines. The contrast with German military facilities was notable. Hartmann's diary noted that barracks at Camp Crossville were better constructed and maintained than Wehrmacht barracks in North Africa where he had been stationed. The observation wasn't anomalous. Multiple prisoners made similar comparisons. Then came the first meal. This was when expectations collided with reality in ways that propaganda couldn't explain away. Camp Crossville's June 1943 menu for newly arrived prisoners: beef stew with vegetables prepared with actual beef, white bread with butter, canned fruit, peaches or pears, cookies made with real sugar and fat, coffee with sugar and milk, portions substantial, approximately 3,500 calories, quality good by American military standards, exceptional by German military standards. Variety exceeded what German soldiers received. Hartmann wrote that meal exceeded anything he had eaten in 2 years of military service. Bread, white rather than black. Butter, real butter rather than margarine substitute. Meat, identifiable beef rather than mystery substance. Fruit, actual fruit. Coffee, real coffee rather than roasted grain substitute. Sugar, real sugar rather than saccharin tablets. He assumed this was a special meal designed to impress new arrivals, that subsequent meals would revert to minimal rations. Other prisoners shared this assumption based on conversations during meal. He was wrong. Subsequent meals maintained same standard. Breakfast, June 11th. scrambled eggs made with real eggs and milk, bacon or sausage with substantial meat content, white bread with butter and jam, coffee with sugar and milk. Approximately 900 calories. Lunch: meat, beef, pork, or chicken, potatoes prepared various ways, cooked vegetables, bread with butter, dessert. Approximately 1,300 calories. Dinner: similar portions with different preparations. Variety prevented monotony. Consistency demonstrated abundance wasn't temporary propaganda, but systematic policy. Approximately 1,500 calories. Cumulative daily intake: 3,600 calories. Exceeded German military rations by 30%. Exceeded German civilian rations by 50 to 100%. The consistency forced recognition that this wasn't temporary propaganda. This was standard American military feeding policy applied to enemy prisoners. Psychological impact accumulated over days and weeks as every meal maintained quality and quantity that exceeded expectations. Hartmann's diary, June 24th. 2 weeks in camp. Every meal has maintained same quality. I don't understand this. We are enemy prisoners, yet we eat better than I ate serving Germany. The Americans either possess resources beyond comprehension, or this is elaborate deception that will end suddenly. But I see no indication of deception. The abundance appears real. June 1943. Meanwhile in Berlin, propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels prepared newsreel footage depicting American POW camps as brutal facilities where prisoners were starved and beaten. The footage staged scenes with German actors pretending to be American guards, exaggerated brutality, emaciated prisoner actors. The newsreel would be shown in German theaters throughout June 1943. Propaganda claimed Americans violated Geneva Convention systematically. German audiences who believed propaganda would be shocked when prisoners returned 3 years later, describing opposite conditions. Meanwhile, in Washington, War Department officials monitored prisoner correspondence for intelligence value. Office of Prisoner of War Operations tracked themes in captured letters. Analysis showed prisoners consistently reported conditions exceeding expectations. Officials recognized unintended propaganda value. Germans learning truth about American abundance undermined Nazi ideology more effectively than explicit propaganda broadcasts could achieve. Decision: allow letters to flow. Let truth do the work. German censors would read letters, try to suppress them, fail to stop information from reaching German civilians. Meanwhile, in Hamburg, Frau Müller received letter from her husband Hans, describing ice cream served 3 times weekly. She read letter to neighbors who initially didn't believe it. Fresh butter, white bread, frozen desserts. Impossible during wartime, they said. Hans must be lying to protect family from worry. But when multiple families received similar letters from different camps, belief became unavoidable. Details were too consistent, too specific, too absurd to fabricate. American abundance was real. German propaganda had been lies. Meanwhile, at farms across Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, American farmers prepared fields for planting using German prisoner labor under Geneva Convention protocols. Farmers observed prisoners with mixture of suspicion and pragmatism. These were enemy soldiers, men who had fought against Americans. But labor shortages meant farmers needed workers regardless of nationality. Proximity would create unexpected human connections as prisoners and farmers worked side by side. Germans would observe American agricultural methods, mechanization levels, yields per acre, living standards of ordinary farmers. Observations would provide additional evidence that American prosperity extended beyond military camps. Meanwhile, across 500 camps throughout America, Texas, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Wisconsin, California, Colorado, Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, identical scenes unfolded. Prisoners tasting ice cream for first time. Prisoners writing letters home describing abundance. Prisoners gaining weight. prisoners receiving dental care, prisoners questioning everything propaganda had taught them. The transformation, systematic across 370,000 prisoners, cumulative psychological impact would reshape post-war Germany. Returned prisoners would become advocates for American-style democracy, having witnessed its prosperity firsthand. Ice cream would accomplish what military victory alone couldn't: complete ideological transformation. Ice cream became symbol of American abundance that prisoners referenced most frequently in letters home and in post-war accounts preserved in archives and oral history collections. The frozen dessert, served approximately 3 times weekly in most camps. Servings, modest by American civilian standards, perhaps 4 ounces, half cup, represented luxury that most German prisoners hadn't experienced since before war. Many had never experienced at all. The ice cream was American style, sweet, approximately 10–12% sugar content. Creamy, adequate butterfat content, typically 10–14%. Cold enough to cause tooth sensitivity when consumed quickly, maintained at approximately 0–10 degrees Fahrenheit. Common flavors: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. Occasional variations: butter pecan, cherry, mint when ingredients available. Quality: good. Real dairy products with adequate sugar and fat, rather than artificial products that had appeared in some German cities before war. Temperature maintained through refrigeration infrastructure that was standard in American camps, but would have been exceptional luxury in German facilities. Camp Crossville: multiple walk-in refrigeration units powered by reliable electricity. Refrigeration systems maintained consistent temperatures regardless of outside weather conditions. Infrastructure represented capital investment that exceeded what Germany had devoted to entire military installations. German prisoners had various reactions to ice cream, depending on backgrounds and previous experience. Some prisoners from rural areas had never tasted ice cream before. Wasn't common in rural Germany even before war. Some prisoners remembered ice cream from pre-war childhood in cities like Berlin or Hamburg. Hadn't tasted it in years, perhaps not since 1939 when wartime restrictions began. Some prisoners had tasted inferior versions, German ice cream with less sugar, less smooth texture due to inadequate fat content, less cold due to primitive refrigeration. Didn't compare favorably to American product. Universal reaction regardless of previous experience. Surprised that enemy prisoners were receiving such luxury as routine meal component rather than special occasion treat. Ice cream was luxury even in peacetime Germany, where it was available primarily in cities and primarily during summer months. During wartime, completely unavailable to civilians except perhaps to highest party officials who had access to special supplies. That Americans served it routinely to enemy prisoners 3 times weekly suggested abundance that exceeded German comprehension of what was economically possible. Obergefreiter Hans Müller wrote July 1943, letter to family in Hamburg. The Americans serve ice cream 3 times weekly as if it were ordinary food rather than exceptional luxury reserved for special occasions. I initially thought prisoners were being given special treatment designed to impress Red Cross inspectors. But I learned from camp personnel that this is standard American military policy applied across all POW camps. I cannot reconcile American treatment of prisoners with propaganda about American poverty and exploitation of workers. His letter, intercepted by German censors. All prisoner mail read by censors on both American and German sides. Censor added notation expressing concern that such descriptions created unrealistic expectations about availability of consumer goods in post-war Germany. Censor noted that multiple letters were describing similar conditions, recommended that mail distribution be controlled to prevent widespread knowledge of American abundance from undermining German civilian morale. Censor's concern, well-founded. Letters describing American abundance were systematically undermining German propaganda about American weakness and German superiority. American military authorities monitoring prisoner correspondence for intelligence purposes noted frequency of ice cream references, commissioned analysis to understand why this particular food item generated disproportionate psychological impact. Analysis conducted by psychological warfare specialists September 1943 concluded, ice cream represented multiple aspects of American abundance simultaneously. Dairy surplus, indicating agricultural productivity. Sugar availability, indicating both agricultural and industrial capacity. Refrigeration infrastructure, indicating electrical generation and distribution capacity. Casual attitude toward luxury goods, indicating cultural assumption of abundance rather than scarcity. Each aspect contradicted specific elements of German propaganda about American poverty. Provided concrete evidence that propaganda had been systematically false. Hartmann's diary, July 8, 1943. Ice cream again today, third time this week. I understand now that this is routine, not special treatment. The Americans serve frozen dessert to enemy prisoners as standard meal component. The implications are staggering. This single fact, ice cream 3 times weekly, proves that everything we were told about American poverty was false. A nation cannot serve luxury desserts to hundreds of thousands of prisoners while fighting global war unless it possesses productive capacity beyond anything Germany achieved. The statistical reality of American POW camp operations documented abundance that German economists initially refused to believe was possible. Daily calories, German military rations, 2,800 when fully supplied. German civilians, 1,800, 2,200 when available. American prisoners, 3,600 standard. The mathematics, undeniable. Enemy prisoners ate better than Germany fed own soldiers. Cost per day. Americans spent $1.15 feeding each prisoner. German military budget, $0.80 per soldier. Americans spent more feeding enemies than Germany spent feeding own troops. Economic comparison revealed civilizational gap in productive capacity. Weight gain, average 18 pounds, first 6 months. Percentage gaining weight 89%. Physical evidence written in prisoner bodies, healthier as captives than as soldiers. Letters home, 450,000 monthly, reaching 2+ million Germans through family networks. Information spread faster than censors could suppress it. Every letter, testimony that propaganda had been lies. Every description of ice cream, white bread, dental care, proof of American abundance. German ideology couldn't explain. The numbers told story that couldn't be rationalized through Nazi framework. American prosperity, real. German propaganda, false. Evidence surrounded prisoners daily, could be tasted, felt, measured, undeniable. Hartmann's diary, September 22, 1943. I have gained 12 kilograms since capture. My teeth have been fixed, 7 cavities filled, 2 root canals saving teeth that would have been extracted in Germany. I eat meat every day, ice cream 3 times weekly. I earn wages sufficient to purchase cigarettes and candy with money remaining. Everything we were told about American poverty was systematically false. Everything. The evidence surrounds me. I can taste it, feel it, measure it. I cannot maintain belief in German superiority when confronted with such undeniable proof of American abundance. Medical care provided to German POWs in American camps exceeded what most prisoners had received during military service and far exceeded what German civilians were receiving during wartime. Each camp, medical facilities staffed by US Army medical personnel, doctors, dentists, nurses, facilities equipped with surgical equipment, X-ray machines, laboratory equipment, pharmaceutical supplies, dental equipment, medical infrastructure, represented investment in prisoner health that German authorities hadn't matched for own troops. Medical treatment provided regardless of condition's severity or cost. Prisoners requiring major surgery received it. Prisoners needing extended hospitalization accommodated. Prisoners requiring expensive medications received them. Treatment, not rationed based on economic considerations. American policy treated prisoner health as obligation rather than optional expense. Dental care particularly impressed German prisoners. Many hadn't received dental care in years. Wehrmacht didn't prioritize dental health. Soldiers with dental problems expected to function despite pain. American policy treated dental health as important component of overall health. Prisoners received dental examinations shortly after arrival. Treatment plans developed. Cavities filled using modern techniques and quality materials. Infected teeth treated with root canals rather than simple extraction. Extractions, when necessary, performed with anesthesia and proper surgical technique. Dentures provided for prisoners who needed them. Lieutenant Werner Schmidt wrote August 1943 diary, "I've received more dental care in 2 months as American prisoner than in 5 years of German military service. 3 cavities filled, 1 infected tooth saved through root canal procedure. My teeth cleaned professionally." American dentist explained that untreated dental problems could lead to serious health issues. That prevention was more cost-effective than treating advanced problems. Photographic evidence documented transformation systematically. American military photographed prisoners on arrival and at regular intervals. Photographs created visual record that couldn't be disputed. Hartmann arrival photo, June 1943. Gaunt face, hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, visible ribs through shirt. Weight, 142 pounds. Height, 5'9". BMI, 21.0. Low normal. Hartmann, December 1943. Filled out face, healthy color, clear eyes, normal build. Weight, 163 pounds. Height, unchanged. BMI, 24.1. Healthy. Visible muscle mass rather than emaciation. Medical records provided clinical documentation. Height, weight, blood pressure, dental condition, vision, hearing, all measured on arrival and at regular intervals. Data created irrefutable record of health improvements. X-rays documented dental transformation with clinical precision. Arrival X-rays, cavities, infections, bone loss from untreated periodontal disease. 6 months later, filled cavities, treated infections. Improved bone density from adequate nutrition and proper dental care. Radiographic proof, treatment quality exceeded German military dental standards substantially. Weight records told systematic story. Average weight on arrival, 142, 156 pounds for men, 5'8" to 5'10". Average weight after 6 months, 160, 176 pounds. Gain, 15 to 20 pounds, representing combination of muscle mass from adequate protein and work, fat from sufficient caloric intake. Medical assessments, gains reflected return to healthy weight rather than obesity. Blood pressure normalized for many prisoners who showed hypertensive readings on arrival. Anemia rates decreased substantially after months of adequate diet with sufficient iron. Skin conditions resolved with proper hygiene facilities and medical treatment. General health markers improved across virtually all measured parameters. Health improvements provided physical evidence of American abundance, complementing psychological evidence from food service. Prisoners could feel themselves becoming healthier, could see physical changes in mirrors, could measure improvement through increased strength and endurance during work details. Bodily evidence of American prosperity, undeniable even to prisoners who wanted to maintain ideological commitment to German superiority. Hartmann's diary, August 15, 1943. American dentist finished my treatment today. My teeth don't hurt for first time in 3 years. Americans did this for enemy prisoner. Why? Because they can afford to. Because they have resources Germany lacks. I understand now why we lost. not because German soldiers weren't brave, but because we challenged nation with productive capacity so vast it could afford luxuries for enemies that Germany couldn't provide for own people. Camp canteens, where prisoners could purchase additional items using wages earned from labor, provided economic education that undermined German propaganda about capitalism as exploitative system. Geneva Convention permitted compensated prisoner labor for non-military purposes. American policy implemented this through work programs that paid prisoners wages, initially 80 cents daily, later increased to $1 daily. Wages paid in scrip valid only in camp canteens rather than US currency. But purchasing power, substantial relative to prices charged. Camp Crossville's canteen stocked approximately 200 different items: cigarettes, 15 cents per pack of 20, candy bars, 5 cents, toiletries including soap, shampoo, toothpaste, shaving supplies, 10 cents to 50 cents, clothing items including underwear, socks, shirts, 50 cents to $3, stationery and writing supplies, newspapers and magazines, various other goods, prices set to make items affordable to prisoners earning $1 daily. Prisoner could purchase pack of cigarettes and candy bar and still have money remaining. Prisoner could save wages for week and purchase substantial clothing item. Economic accessibility demonstrated that American capitalism could provide consumer goods at prices that workers could afford, contradicted German propaganda about capitalism creating poverty. Variety of available goods exceeded what German civilians could obtain through rationing and black market combined. Cigarettes, rationed in Germany at 4 or 5 per day when available. American camp canteens sold unlimited quantities at 15 cents per pack of 20 cigarettes. Candy, virtually unavailable to German civilians. American canteens sold multiple candy varieties. Toiletries, scarce in Germany. American canteens stocked them abundantly. German prisoners working in American agriculture or industry observed American workers' consumption patterns, recognized that camp canteen goods were available to American civilians in similar variety and price ranges. American workers earning $1 or $2 per hour could easily afford cigarettes, candy, toiletries, same items that were luxuries unavailable to German civilians regardless of income because supplies didn't exist. Canteen system also provided education in consumer choice. Prisoners could choose between different cigarette brands, different candy types, different brands of soap or toothpaste. Variety, trivial by American standards. Revolutionary for German prisoners accustomed to a system where consumer choice was between available product and nothing. Experience of choosing based on preference rather than mere availability demonstrated consumer society that German system hadn't created despite propaganda about worker welfare. Some prisoners accumulated substantial savings through combination of wages and minimal spending. Records show prisoners who worked regularly and spent conservatively could save $15 to $20 monthly, more than many German workers earned in same period. Accumulated savings provided security and purchasing power that exceeded what most had experienced as German soldiers or civilians. Hartmann's diary, October 3, 1943. I have saved $18 over past 3 months. This exceeds 3 months' wages for German factory worker. I earned this as prisoner performing farm labor that was not particularly difficult. Americans pay enemy prisoners wages that allow purchasing luxuries and accumulating savings. The economic system, we were told, created exploitation, actually provides opportunities that socialism promised but never delivered. Christmas 1943. Christmas celebrations in American POW camps during December 1943 provided dramatic demonstration of American abundance and cultural approach to holidays, that impressed German prisoners accustomed to wartime austerity. American military policy permitted religious observances consistent with prisoner beliefs, encouraged celebrations of cultural holidays including Christmas. Policy reflected American approach to civil liberties applied even to enemy prisoners rather than merely meeting minimum Geneva Convention requirements. Camp Crossville's Christmas program, 1943, special religious services conducted by German chaplains, decorations including Christmas tree and mess hall, special Christmas meal, distribution of Red Cross packages, entertainment programs featuring prisoner musicians and actors, delivery of packages from American civilians, Christmas meal, extraordinary by wartime standards anywhere, menu, roast turkey with stuffing. Most prisoners had never eaten turkey, mashed potatoes and gravy, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce. Another food most prisoners hadn't encountered, vegetables including canned corn and green beans, white bread with butter, pumpkin pie, coffee and milk, candy canes distributed after meal. Portions, generous. Approximately 4,500 to 5,000 calories for single meal. Quality, excellent. Fresh turkey prepared properly, vegetables cooked well, pie made with real pumpkin and adequate sugar. Meal exceeded what German officers ate for Christmas. Was incomprehensible luxury to German civilians who received minimal special rations for Christmas, if anything at all. American civilian groups donated Christmas packages containing homemade cookies, candy, toiletries, gloves, socks, writing paper. Packages came from church groups, civic organizations, individual families who wanted to demonstrate Christian charity toward prisoners. Generosity puzzled German prisoners who expected enemies to be hostile rather than charitable. Psychological impact of American civilians giving gifts to enemy prisoners, substantial. Gesture demonstrated confidence and security. Americans felt safe enough from German military threat that they could afford kindness toward German soldiers. Charity also demonstrated Christian values applied practically rather than merely proclaimed verbally. Germans had been taught that Americans were decadent and godless. American Christians giving gifts to German prisoners contradicted that propaganda completely. Hartmann received package from Methodist Church in Crossville containing homemade cookies, candy canes, warm socks, small New Testament in German, handwritten card saying, "Merry Christmas from the people of Crossville. May God bless you and bring you home safely to your family." He kept card for rest of his life. His diary, December 25, 1943. Today I ate meal that exceeded anything I experienced in Germany, even during peacetime prosperity. I received gifts from American civilians who have sons fighting against Germans in Europe, yet show charity toward enemy prisoners. I attended religious service where we sang German Christmas carols without interference or mockery from American guards. I cannot reconcile this treatment with what propaganda taught us about American brutality and godlessness. These people demonstrate Christianity through actions rather than merely words. They show strength through mercy rather than cruelty. I am beginning to understand that we were not just defeated militarily, but that we challenged a nation whose values were superior to ours. Systematic pattern of prisoner correspondence describing American camp conditions created cumulative psychological impact on German home front that authorities couldn't effectively suppress. Statistical analysis of prisoner correspondence, approximately 450,000 letters monthly from German POWs to families in Germany during peak correspondence periods 1943 and 1944. Assuming average 5 family members or friends reading each letter, correspondence reached approximately 2.25 million Germans monthly with first-hand descriptions of American conditions. Letters followed consistent patterns revealing systematic re-evaluation of propaganda. Early letters June to July 1943, expressed surprise at conditions but included caveats suggesting temporary nature. Americans are feeding us well now, but this may change, or I don't know if this treatment will continue. Letters August-October 1943 expressed growing recognition that conditions were consistent.
Food remains excellent, or every meal includes meat and bread. Letters. November 1943 onward expressed direct challenges to propaganda. Everything we were told about American poverty was false, or I cannot understand how Germany expected to defeat nation with such resources. Evolution revealed psychological transformation occurring across prisoner population. Initial skepticism gave way to acceptance that contradicting evidence was real rather than deceptive. Acceptance led to questioning of other propaganda claims. Questioning led to broader ideological re-evaluation that undermined commitment to Nazi ideology, even among prisoners who maintained loyalty to Germany as nation. German censorship attempted to control impact by adding stamps to letters indicating content should be understood as propaganda or coercion. Stamps, counterproductive. Recipients assumed that officials were attempting to suppress truth rather than that prisoners were being deceived. Letters that German censors marked as propaganda often believed more strongly than unmarked letters because marking suggested authorities feared their content. Some German families received multiple letters from different prisoners, relatives or friends who had been captured at different times and locations. Consistency across independent sources made denial impossible. When brother, cousin, and family friend all described similar conditions in letters from different camps, families concluded descriptions were accurate rather than coordinated propaganda. Frau Hartmann in Bremen received letters from her son Klaus describing ice cream 3 times weekly. From her nephew describing dental care that exceeded German standards. From family friend describing wages that allowed purchasing luxuries, she wrote back, "Klaus, your letters and those from Heinrich and Peter all describe conditions we can barely imagine. We want to believe you are being treated well, but ice cream 3 times weekly, dental care for prisoners, wages for enemy soldiers, these things seem impossible during wartime. Yet 3 of you independently describe same conditions. We must accept that what you write is true, that Americans possess abundance we were told they lacked, that propaganda deceived us about many things." Her letter, intercepted by German censors who noted growing pattern of families accepting prisoner accounts despite official efforts to discredit them. Censor wrote, "Civilian morale increasingly affected by prisoner correspondence describing American abundance, recommend increased restrictions on mail delivery. However, restricting mail creates additional morale problems as families unable to communicate with captured relatives. Situation difficult to manage." Hartmann's letter, November 1943. "Mutti, I know you won't believe this, but I am healthier now than when I was fighting for Germany. I have gained 18 pounds, my teeth are fixed, I eat meat every day. I cannot reconcile this with what we were taught. Americans are not weak. They are so strong, they can afford to feed enemies better than we feed ourselves. The propaganda was lies, all of it. I am ashamed I believed it.
But I am grateful to know truth now, rather than die believing falsehoods." German prisoners performing labor outside camps observed American workplaces and industrial practices that provided additional evidence of American productive capacity exceeding German achievement. Approximately 200,000 German POWs worked in American agriculture during growing seasons, harvested crops, wheat, cotton, fruits, vegetables, work hard, but conditions professional rather than brutal. Safety equipment provided, water breaks regular, medical care available for work injuries. Treatment exceeded what German agricultural workers received under Reich labor service.
Prisoners working American farms observed mechanization levels that exceeded German agricultural practices substantially. Single American farms operated multiple tractors where German farms might share single tractor among several families. American farms used specialized equipment for planting, cultivation, harvesting, where German farms relied on manual labor. American yields per acre exceeded German averages by 30 to 50% depending on crops. Difference reflected mechanization, fertilization, agricultural science rather than merely better land. Farm owners employing prisoner labor weren't wealthy elites but ordinary American farmers who owned substantial land and operated efficient businesses. Economic success of middle-class American farmers contradicted propaganda about capitalism creating poverty. These were workers who controlled means of production and prospered from their labor without being exploited by wealthy owners. Prisoners observed American farmers' living standards with particular attention. Farm families lived in houses with electricity, running water, indoor plumbing, telephone service, automobiles, radio receivers. Amenities that were luxuries in rural Germany, standard for American farmers. Children attended well-equipped schools, received hot lunches, had access to libraries. Economic prosperity extended beyond farmers themselves to entire rural communities. Some prisoners worked in food processing facilities during harvest seasons, observed industrial-scale operations that dwarfed German facilities. Canneries processed tons of produce hourly using automated equipment. Quality control rejected perfectly good food for minor imperfections. Standards reflected abundance. Only best products reached consumers, while rejected items went to animal feed or waste. German facilities couldn't afford such selectivity, used everything regardless of quality because scarcity demanded maximum utilization. Prisoners working in factories observed similar patterns. American industrial facilities, more mechanized, better maintained, more productive per worker than comparable German facilities. Workers, better paid, better treated, safer working conditions than German industrial workers received. Output per worker hour exceeded German productivity substantially, not because American workers worked harder, but because they worked with better equipment, better organization, better management.
Hartman worked on Iowa corn farm August-October 1943. His diary entries documented observations that accumulated into broader understanding. August 12th. Farmer owns 3 tractors. 3. His farm, 640 acres. He works it with family and occasional hired labor plus prisoners during harvest. German farm this size would require dozens of workers year-round. American mechanization creates productivity we never achieved. August 28th. Farmer's house has electricity, telephone, indoor bathroom, kitchen with refrigerator and electric stove. His children each have bicycles. Family owns automobile and truck. This is ordinary American farmer, not wealthy landowner or party official. His standard of living exceeds German middle-class professionals. September 15th. Yields here average 80 bushels per acre. German farms lucky to get 50 bushels.
Difference: mechanization, fertilization, seed quality, agricultural knowledge. American agricultural science decades ahead of German practice. October 3rd. Farmer paid camp authorities for our labor. Amount exceeded what German agricultural workers earn monthly. Americans pay for prisoner labor while German system used slave labor from concentration camps. Their system creates prosperity. Ours created misery masked as sacrifice for greater good. Between 1945 and 1946, German POWs returned to destroyed homeland, carrying knowledge that would reshape post-war Germany and their own lives permanently. They returned to country where food shortages were more severe than during war.
Rationing provided approximately 1,200 calories daily when available. Black markets couldn't supply adequate nutrition at any price. Malnutrition widespread among civilian population. They returned having eaten 3,600 calories daily as prisoners. Contrast, undeniable and devastating to claims about German organizational superiority. Returned prisoners weighed more, looked healthier, had better dental health than family members who had remained in Germany. Physical evidence, visible proof that American captivity had been better than German freedom. Recognition created psychological crisis for Germans who had believed sacrifices were necessary for victory. Learning that enemies had prospered while Germans suffered revealed that sacrifices had been unnecessary, that leadership had failed completely, that ideology had been false.
SS Marine Flasher departed New York Harbor May 15, 1946, carrying 4,200 German prisoners returning to Germany. Voyage would take 12 days. Arrival would create psychological shock as returned prisoners confronted destroyed homeland. Hartmann stood at rail watching America recede, 3 years as prisoner, captured at 142 pounds, returning at 167 pounds, teeth fixed, health good, savings 180, more than German worker earned in year. Diary in pocket documenting transformation, knowledge of American prosperity that would reshape his understanding of politics, economics, society for remainder of his life. Ship docked Bremen May 27th. Port, ruins. City, rubble. First sight of Germany after 3 years. Created immediate recognition that American captivity had been better than German freedom. Comparison, undeniable.
British occupation authorities processed returned prisoners through reception camps. Medical examinations documented that 87% of returned prisoners from American camps were healthier than German civilians. Average weight advantage, 22 pounds. Dental health superior. General health markers better across all categories. Hartmann traveled to Bremen seeking family. City, destroyed. 70% of buildings damaged or destroyed by Allied bombing. Mother, living in basement of bombed building. 3 rooms for 6 people. No windows, no heat. Rubble piled in streets. Infrastructure destroyed. Food, 1,200 calories daily through rations when available. Malnutrition visible in hollow faces and thin bodies throughout city. His mother didn't recognize him initially. He was too healthy, too well fed, too strong. When she understood this healthy man was her son returned from captivity, she wept. She had assumed prisoners were starving, assumed Americans treated captives brutally. Learning he had eaten better than Germans while Germans suffered created crisis of understanding. Everything propaganda promised had been lies. Everything propaganda warned about had been false. Hartmann shared American chocolate bars he'd purchased from camp canteen with savings. His mother and siblings ate chocolate for first time in 5 years. Taste, proof of American abundance, evidence, couldn't be denied. Conversation that followed reshaped families' political views. Mother asked, "How can we rebuild Germany?" Hartmann answered, "By becoming more like Americans, by embracing democracy and market economy, by rejecting everything Nazis taught us." Across Germany, we 370,000 returned prisoners created similar scenes. Healthy prisoners returned to starving civilians. Contrast, destroyed any remaining belief in German superiority. Returned prisoners became witnesses testifying to American prosperity through their bodies, through their experiences, through knowledge they carried. Hartmann's diary, May 28, 1946. I am home, but home is ruins. My family lives in basement. They are starving. I am healthy and strong because Americans fed me well for 3 years. The irony is devastating. I fought for Germany, was captured, lived better as American prisoner than my family lived as German civilians during same period. Everything we believed was wrong. Everything we fought for was based on lies. I will spend rest of my life telling truth about what I learned. That democracy works. that capitalism creates prosperity, that Americans demonstrated strength through mercy, that Germany must learn from those we fought rather than repeating mistakes that destroyed us. Story of German prisoners expecting torture but finding ice cream reveals profound truths about power, prosperity, and transformation. First truth, direct experience trumps propaganda. German prisoners learned American abundance was real by eating it daily. Evidence couldn't be rationalized away, couldn't be explained through ideological framework. Tasting ice cream 3 times weekly proved prosperity more effectively than any lecture about economic systems.
Experiencing health improvements demonstrated American medical capabilities more powerfully than any propaganda broadcast. The physical evidence, weight gained, teeth fixed, body strengthened, was undeniable. Propaganda collapsed when confronted with reality that could be tasted, felt, measured. Second truth, humane treatment demonstrates strength, not weakness. Germans expected brutal treatment reflecting American weakness, found generous treatment reflecting American strength. Nations secure enough to feed enemy prisoners better than feeding own soldiers, demonstrated confidence that impressed prisoners more than cruelty would have. Americans who gave ice cream to enemies showed power so vast they could afford luxuries for defeated foes. Strength through mercy rather than through brutality proved that American system created security that German system never achieved. Prisoners learned that democracy wasn't weak, but strong, that humanitarian values reflected confidence rather than vulnerability. Third truth, material abundance enables psychological transformation. American food transformed German ideology without coercion, without lectures, without forced re-education, simply by feeding prisoners well and treating them humanely. Every meal demonstrated American prosperity. Every medical treatment proved American capabilities. Every wage payment showed American economic system worked. The abundance spoke louder than words, created transformation that deliberate propaganda couldn't achieve.
Germans who experienced American prosperity became advocates for American systems not through indoctrination, but through observation. Fourth truth, small symbols carry enormous weight. Ice cream wasn't strategic weapon, wasn't deliberately deployed as psychological warfare, was simply standard American military policy of providing adequate rations that happened to include dessert. But frozen dessert became symbol prisoners remembered for lifetimes, represented everything Germany lacked, demonstrated America's casual assumption of abundance, proved propaganda about American poverty had been systematically false. The ice cream, minor detail in American military logistics, major revelation in German psychological transformation. Sometimes small things carry greatest symbolic weight. Ice cream represented civilizational difference that couldn't be explained away. Fifth truth, victory requires defeating enemy ideology, not just enemy military. Americans defeated German military through superior resources and industrial capacity, but lasting victory required defeating German ideology, required convincing Germans that democracy was superior to fascism, that capitalism created prosperity rather than poverty, that humanitarian values were strength, not weakness. The POW camps accomplished this ideological transformation more effectively than combat victories alone could. Prisoners who returned to Germany carried knowledge that would reshape German political culture. They advocated for American-style democracy, having witnessed its prosperity. They promoted market economy, having experienced its benefits. They rejected fascism, having learned its promises were lies. The prisoners who expected torture and found ice cream experienced transformation that lectures could never achieve. They tasted proof. They witnessed abundance. They compared and recognized inferiority through undeniable evidence. When they returned to Germany, They carried knowledge that rebuilt their country, that democracy worked, that capitalism prospered, that humane treatment reflected strength, that American values deserved emulation. The ice cream wasn't just dessert, it was proof of civilizational difference. Frozen sweetness demonstrated American abundance more effectively than propaganda. Memory lasted lifetimes. Physical evidence prisoners carried forever. They expected torture, they found ice cream. And that difference transformed them from enemies into witnesses who would reshape Germany's future. Hartmann lived until 1987, became mechanic in Stuttgart, joined Christian Democratic Union, pro-American political party, advocated for market economy and American alliance throughout life. Final interview, 1985. The ice cream was what I remember most, not because it tasted good, though it did, but because it proved everything we'd been told was lies. A nation that gives ice cream to prisoners is a nation with power we never understood. We challenged civilization that could afford luxuries for enemies. We lost not just war, but our entire worldview. The ice cream taught me more about democracy than any book. It was tangible proof, evidence I could taste, memory I carried for 42 years.
That's why I tell young Germans, never underestimate America, never challenge democracy, never believe propaganda that contradicts observable reality. Ice cream, simple frozen dessert. But it changed my life, changed Germany, proved that prosperity speaks louder than propaganda, that abundance demonstrates strength, that small things sometimes teach greatest lessons. The ice cream melted within minutes of being served, but memory lasted generations. Proof that sometimes smallest details carry most profound truths.